Maybe you could begin with a brief introduction to this incredible documentary for people who don't know anything about it. What can you tell us about The Mountain Within Me?
Ah, right. Well, The Mountain Within Me is about Ed Jackson, who is an ex-rugby player who had a terrible accident a few years ago, and he broke his spine, and he was told he'd never be able to walk again. And then over the period of about a year, he kind of managed to pull himself back into motion, and then got himself out of hospital and started walking and started climbing, ended up climbing Snowdon, and now has gone on to climb other peaks, and is an incredible inspiration.
Can you tell us a bit about how the project came about? I mean, was
Yeah.
his story one that you knew about in advance? Was it them that someone else that approached you? I know he'd written a book about his experiences, and perhaps there was something in that that really spoke to you.
Yeah, so I was approached by a producer who I've worked with a few times called George Chignall. She was approached by Helen Parker at Universal, who'd read the book and, got very into the idea of turning it into a film. And I said to George, look, George, I'm not a mountain climber. Like, what are you doing coming to me? I'm not the most physically active, director in the world, and I don't think I can do this. But she said, yeah, but you're really sensitive and you tell human stories, and it's not just a mountain film, and it's much more a mental health story. And then I sort of thought, okay, that is my bag. So we went down and met Ed, and obviously it was him interviewing me as much as me interviewing him, and we saw we had the same values, and we just got on really well, and so that was that.
I think what's really striking about the film is just how candid both him and his partner Lois are throughout the film, the other subjects that are also in it.
Yeah.
Was that a process that's kind of had to happen before you even, jumped on board, gaining that trust? And obviously it can make or break a documentary film, how much you can get that sort of intimate look into someone's story, into someone's psyche. So was that something that was very important part of the project?
Yeah, always for me. I mean, I that is what I'm about, I guess. If there's anything, is to just really connect on a deep human level. So I think I realized after even the first meeting that we would be okay. Like we would be doing that as we went on. He is very candid. Like it's not difficult to talk to Ed and Lois. They're both very open, and they will discuss the difficult subjects, whether it's, bladders or sexual function or marriage or, whatever it is, they are happy to go there. That's not the difficult thing. I think perhaps the more difficult thing is actually getting a genuine vulnerability, because his nurturing, his ethos, the whole sort of athlete rugby player in him is very much about coping and getting on with life, and not ever sitting down and being too reflective. It's very, his thing is about being positive and physically moving forward. And the act of walking and climbing is almost the motion that goes with the psychology. So actually getting him to genuinely sit and go a bit deeper was difficult, not because he can't, but because he was just always about to climb another mountain, so it's like, stop, Ed. But I think we got enough moments, like we got enough for you to know what's underneath, and for people to feel they can connect into it, because you don't want him to be a hero. You just want him to be a lad who's made good, and that other people can follow and do the same thing. I know he doesn't want that either. He doesn't want to be, the hero that climbs mountains. So that's a really difficult balance to get in the media, because, we all want heroes. So yeah, that was an interesting one.
In fact, yeah, I think it does lead to some of the sort of standout moments. I think one of those initial interviews where he's just relaying, the accident.
Yeah.
And he kind of breaks down in front of the camera, almost saying, like, I've told this story, but I've not really emotionally connected with this story. And like you sort of mentioned, the bit where him and Lois are sat next to each other and talking about that really difficult moment in their marriage, and sort of having to sort of figure out how they were going to work things out going forward. So, what was it like also, I guess, being sat on the other side of the camera and seeing those moments? I guess on the one hand, very hard to watch, but also really crucial to really understanding the whole story.
Like I've been at this game for over 30 years. I'm an old bird, and I'm also a trained life coach. I've done a lot of interviews with people, so I'm not new to that process, and I'm very conscious that a camera in itself can often make us feel seen and heard in a way that strangely we haven't felt before, and it does often become a moment where people suddenly feel like they're cracking open, and they feel very vulnerable, and also you hold the space for them. That is also part of the art of directing, is to sit and be still for people, so that they can really go to those places. That is something it's just a skill set that has evolved over many years. And so for me, holding that space for him just felt completely natural, to be honest. And it's not my pain, it's his. And I just sat there with him. So yeah. I don't know what more to say about that. I mean, obviously it's emotional, but it's also just, it's his story. It's his story to tell. And I was just there to be the storyteller.
On the flip side of that, capturing, all these incredible moments of all these feats that he's accomplished, climbing Annapurna and Snowdon. I mean, what were the logistics of that? How much of that were you sending people up with cameras? How much of that were you there for? How did you even, I guess, use all that footage? I mean, that must have been a process in and of itself.
You're absolutely right. It took 2.5 years to piece together what was hundreds of hours of their amateur video archive. It was just like, here's a hard drive, take it. Then we had our kind of professional stuff that was drones, and especially that last section that you saw. And then the piece in the middle, the Nepalese piece, he's so difficult to pin down. So before you know it, before you've organised a crew, he's gone. He's gone to Nepal. He's got his videographer Beetle, who's there alongside him, going up the mountain with him. And then you're just dealing with the footage that comes in. So it was a massive jigsaw. And it did take a long time actually to make it look coherent and to kind of give it a feel of a whole film. But that last piece in particular, we did get to pin him down, and we did get to say, Ed, this is what we're doing. And we've got a crew, and we've got a cameraman coming up the mountain with you, and we're going to put mics on you so we get your inner thoughts as you go up. And we've got this amazing drone footage as well. So that piece was, I could, organize it in a way that I knew we'd get those incredible drone shots of him on the top of the peak at the end. So it was a real mishmash. That's the honest answer. But I hope what you end up with is a really coherent kind of journey through what he's doing. And I do think that the micro and the macro, the kind of tiny moments at home relative to the big universal kind of mountains is actually what makes the sort of philosophy of the film work, because it's all about the inner and the outer coming together and enabling us to kind of move forward and heal from trauma. So hopefully those two worlds are come together in some kind of coherent way, I hope.
And I think also even the bits on the mountain, it's not shying away from where he's really struggling, or the people he's with are really struggling, particularly in Nepal, because like you said at the beginning, it's not about just showing the heroism. It's about showing the fact that facing those difficulties, facing those struggles, and keeping going, and not being defeated by that, which I think is a much more important message than just saying, oh, you just need to be able to climb the mountain. We all have to sort of, toughen up. I think there's something great about, how much it does show every step of the way. And because I think then that's also part of what makes it really, really inspiring for people to watch.
I'm so glad you said that. That last section, I was really determined to keep that detail in, because I think you literally get this idea that each handhold and each foothold and, is scary and a struggle, and, he can't move his fingers, and, and he's not trying to be Mr. Super Climber. He's Mr. Amateur trying to figure it out, So I'm really glad that does come across. And I think that detail really helps us, to understand also that when you're overcoming something, it doesn't just happen in one great big leap. It is each step, and you just have to take one step and another step and another step, and that's how you eventually get to the top. It's not some kind of heroic leap. And that journey was also incredibly difficult for me because I am not a fit person, and I literally had to kill myself to get up to the foot of that cliff. So Ed was behind me going, "Come on, Polly, you can do it." And I was like, "Ed, you're the one that's got half a body, you know." Yeah, so it was quite funny, and I think he was really pleased that he got me up there.
And in terms of the takeaways and, the impact of the film, I mean, you really had me choked up more than once in the film. And I just think, of course, it's about his story, but there are so many universal messages in there. And even a lot of the sort of little speeches that he gives, they're just absolutely rammed full of these gems, these, perfect sentences you feel like you could pin up on your wall. We're often, we are making ourselves suffer by sort of constantly beating ourselves up. Our mentality, if you focus always on what you don't have and negative things, then you will feel overcome by those. So I just feel like almost no one can come out of watching this film without feeling incredibly inspired, and also for wanting to give to other people, because you realize, one of the main things he keeps coming back to is that his support network was so crucial. And I think that's something we can forget. I know in your director's statement, you mentioned, we've all come out of COVID and sort of maybe forgotten that. And a lot of those support networks have kind of broken down, perhaps. So I think there's a really great broad message there for anybody watching this to reconnect with people.
You've literally picked the two things that I feel really passionately about. The first one is this idea, which I think is quite controversial sometimes to even say it, which is that we can take control of our suffering, and we do have the option to kind of move away from it. And I think, I really wanted that to be the end of the film, because I really believe that a lot of our suffering is self-imposed. And as I said, people can sit in it for decades sometimes and not realize that there is an option, a choice, to move out of it. So I think Ed and I felt really powerfully together that was how we wanted to end the film. And then the other thing that you said is about community, and I feel really just warmed by the fact that they weren't trying to pretend that they affect hundreds of thousands of people, but they have this community that they've built, and they really invest in it, and the people that are part of it they invest in too, and then those people go out and help other people, and that's the kind of ripple effect. And I think that's the way the world works, and that's what we all really need. We need a group of people who are our community, and then they go out and it spreads. And this kind of global notion that we have to have impacted, X million people. So I think that's really admirable what they're doing in that regard. And the people that he's brought together have been so positively affected by them, and they've genuinely pulled themselves out of really deep holes. And so it is really inspirational. I agree with you.
And what are you working on next? I know you've got this film, I think it was Helena Bonham Carter, Pierce Brosnan.
Yes, I directed a film called 4 Letters of Love by Niall Williams, which is coming out early next year with Pierce Brosnan and Helen Bonham Carter. And I've finished another documentary, and I don't quite know what's happening after that. So I'm always open to offers, Sarah. Us female directors, we have to keep badgering on, because it's not easy out there. And we have to support each other and, keep telling stories, because we need female storytellers.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on the documentary, and I can't wait to see your future projects as well. And I can't wait for everyone to see The Mountain Within Me. Thanks a lot.